Well, the three-headed monster officially making its return to Dallas in 2023 after the Cowboys made the extension for Donovan Wilson in the offseason. That means we get to see more Jayron Kearse, more Malik Hooker, and more Dono in that secondary. But this is building the board, right? So we always got to talk about what's next, what's in the future for that position group. I'm Haley Sutton, and I'm going to quickly bring in Patrick Nosey-Walker because, Patrick, this is a position where, in my opinion, it feels pretty safe, at least at your starting roles, right, with that three-headed monster. But when you look at the depth of that safety room, are there concerns? And is that a position that the Cowboys should be looking at in the draft?
Feels pretty safe. I like that wordplay. That's bars by Haley Sutton. The Cowboys have to feel great about those top three spots on their depth chart. You talk about the re-signing of Donovan Wilson. That was the headline retention for the Dallas Cowboys in this year's free agency, getting him on a multi-year deal. Fantastic. That keeps Malik Hooker and Jayron Kearse together. But not unlike the defensive line, Malik Hooker, Jayron Kearse starting to get on the back end of their contracts. Both of those players are going into contract years. You want to believe the Cowboys will lock them up, but until they do, you're going to have to look behind them for the future. Marquise Bell, Tyler Coyle, Wanye Thomas. Are those players ready? Very talented, good high ceilings, but they're young. There's a ton of youth there. So you have a three-headed monster. That's wonderful, but safety 4, 5, 6. Question mark.
Yeah, you would like to see it be like a six-headed monster, right, where there's no concerns in that group. I love some of those guys you mentioned as well. Another guy who I'm kind of keeping my eye on going into this season, Israel Mukuamu. You know, a guy who has been really versatile. I think he feels much more comfortable at that corner spot, but it'll be exciting to see where he ends up. Piggybacking off of that, though, with that three-headed monster and some of those guys you mentioned, looking ahead to the future, if you're the Cowboys front office, where are the areas in which you want to expand on that safety position? What type of safety are you looking for?
Well, here's where it gets interesting, Haley, because if you look at Bell, even in 1 year under Dan Quinn and Al Harris and those defensive back coaches, they're coaching up Bell to be that flex player that is in the Jayron Kearse mode, that safety linebacker hybrid. So now what you're looking for is who can step in and complement Donovan Wilson. Will that be Tyler Coyle, who is a hard-hitting guy who did very well acquitting himself on special teams in year one? Wanye Thomas suffered an injury on the practice squad. Let's see how he steps up. But if you look towards the draft, you're looking for a complementary piece to a Malik Hooker at free safety. You're looking at a complementary piece to Donovan Wilson, like I mentioned with Tyler Coyle. But there are players, be it from Texas or abroad, in this pool who can bring what the Cowboys need.
Yeah, it's important to note, too, that a lot of those guys are injury prone, just given the position as well. So always nice to have a little depth there. And to get into that depth of what these Cowboys fans, or what you Cowboys fans rather, can look for, let's get over to our resident draft expert, none other than our host of the draft show, Kyle Yeomans, to let us know if you guys we should be keeping our eye on.
Yeah, this safety position is really interesting when it comes to the Cowboys and how the value of the position might fit with where the Cowboys are selecting, because in the past, the Cowboys haven't necessarily invested draft capital to go out and get picks. Even you look at Donovan Wilson, he was a day 3 selection, and he's stuck around at the safety position. Jayron Kearse, Malik Hooker, both added in the offseason. So when you look at the draft prospects out of the safety class, you have the top-heavy guys. Brian Branch out of Alabama, probably the #1 guy. Guess what? Cowboys probably look at him more so as a slot corner than anybody. So if you're going to take a safety, this Cowboys defensive staff might want to see versatility. So I have one guy for you. This is Jair Brown, 5'11", 203 pounds. He's one of those prototypical safeties that can mix and match. He can play in the box. He can play the free deep safety. He can go sideline to sideline and play a little center field over the top. But he can also come down and he can play in the nickel. And I think that's one thing that Brown brings to the table is his ability to read the football, to read a quarterback and make the play on the football. He had 10 interceptions over the last 2 years. Let's take a look at him against Auburn. He's right here. So he actually baits the quarterback inside. Look at where the quarterback was looking. He's all the way out here thinking this whole part of the field is open. But no, it's not. The speed and the agility to plant a foot in the ground, read the quarterback all the way through, and this was an easy interception for Brown. And then he has the awareness and the presence of mind to stay in bound and then able to return this for a couple extra yards as well as you play all the way through it. Stays in bounds, and he tiptoes his way before being taken down right around the midfield mark. But that's just one instance of what Brown can do. You turn it around, you got it against the Rose Bowl. He had 6 interceptions in 2021, which was tied for the FBS lead for safeties. Here he is, more so as an over-the-top guy. There he is at the top of the formation. Watch here. Go ahead and press play. He's reading. Pause it right there. So the throw is already being made. You see this guy, this corner over in the top, if I can actually touch the screen, there we go. Got that route open, right? Wrong. He's going to close this gap very quickly. He reads it over the top, tracks the ball, takes a fantastic angle, gets underneath it, and there's no chance for that wide receiver to not only beat the cornerback, but to turn around and beat Jair Brown as well. You talk about the versatility. He has some link to his game. I love his motor, and a lot of teams around the NFL are speaking very highly on his mentality, on the way that he plays downhill. He has a willingness to be a tackler. He has a willingness to come down into the box, plug in the run game, and then you see what he can do in coverage. He's an all-around safety, but if the Cowboys were to select a guy like this, it may have to be 58 or even before, because he may not be on the board very long.
You go ahead.
Well, I tell you what, he answers the question of what can Brown do for you. But you make a very wonderful point when it comes to the Cowboys being a little reticent to use draft capital when it comes to the safety position. Typically, it's a day 3 situation. You look at players like Jeff Heath. They were able to turn him into an NFL starter. They were able to turn a guy like Kevon Frazier into an NFL starter. You go and you get Donovan Wilson on day 3 as well. Guess what? He's one of the better safeties in the league right now, and you got him in the 6th round. So the Cowboys feel confident that they can turn whatever pick from day 3 at that position into a starter. So you could be looking at that happening again in 2023.
But it kind of sounds like this is a position where when you're adding a safety into this group, you're adding them maybe not for this season, because we talked about right off the top, you know, J-Ron and Malik specifically going into those years where their contracts are running out. So it sounds like this is a perfect opportunity for the Cowboys to bring someone in and allow them to kind of draft and learn as well.
It's really one of those scenarios where, as a class, the big names, these guys that are standing behind us at the moment, and Antonio Johnson and a Sidney Brown from Illinois, those aren't going to be the guys the Cowboys are interested in. They'll do their due diligence and they'll go and research on certain prospects. But for the most part, these are going to be guys they're going to look at late. One guy to keep an eye on, Jason Taylor II out of Oklahoma State. He's one of those big, long, rangy corners. He's not very tall. He's only 5'11", which is okay for the safety position. But he has the longest, or one of the longest, wingspans in the class. And if you know anything about Dan Quinn and what he loves about secondary players, he loves some length. And he's got the length. He's got some speed and agility. Very, very raw in his ability as a whole, because he doesn't necessarily have the great footwork. He doesn't have the great reading ability. But as a frame and somebody to grow into a role, he might be a fit and somebody the Cowboys have their eyes on later. He's going to be a day 3 pick, so that would probably fit the mold a little bit better.
And I'd be interested as well to see what their intrigue level will be with a guy like J.L. Skinner. J.L. Skinner suffered a torn pectoral muscle in his pre-draft preparation, unfortunately, but I was able to catch up with Skinner, the Boise State kid, at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis, and he told me unequivocally he'll be fully ready for somebody's training camp. Maybe that's the Dallas Cowboys. And we all know Dallas does not shy away from Boise State talent.
No. They don't shy away from Boise State talent. It's important, too, to note they don't shy away from injuries as well. You've seen that so often in the past. Just look at Damone Clark, a perfect, very recent example of that. So very good point there with J.L. Skinner. Very good points just in general, covering our draft, Kyle. You've been so awesome. But we're not done here on Building the Board. We still got a couple more positions to tackle in the upcoming episodes. So stick with us as we get to those. But that'll do it for this edition of Building the Board, Safety Edition.